Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and yesterday the Mets made their formal announcement, press conference Jones, Rosario, yeah, it's easy for me to say, Robinson Cano, and Edwin Diaz officially announced as the latest members of the New York Mets. Trade is done, and I want to talk about a couple of things that have happened over the last few days that I haven't really talked about, starting with the decisions on tendering and non-tendering Flores and d'Arnaud. I also want to talk about a few of the other moves that the NL East has made, and talk about another move that's now being rumored that the Mets are thinking about making, and I want to get into that on today's show. In the midst of all the Mets and Mariners trade talk, the non-tender decisions got overlooked, and I didn't get a chance to talk about the fact that that the Mets did not tender a contract to Wilmer Flores on Friday. They instead did not offer him a contract, so Wilmer Flores will become a free agent, and the Mets instead offered that contract to Travis d'Arnaud. A little interesting. I didn't necessarily expect that Wilmer was going to get the contract. I actually thought that d'Arnaud was going to get the contract. I actually thought if they were going to tender to either of them, it would have been to Wilmer. But they decided to tender the contract to d'Arnaud and not to Wilmer, and it is what it is. You know, the unfortunate part with Wilmer Flores is that he is a backup / utility infielder with arthritic knees who really doesn't have a whole lot of versatility on the roster at this point. And bringing in Cano, shifting McNeil to third, opening up first base for Peter Alonso and potentially also for Dominic Smith, Wilmer just doesn't fit. Almost a little bit like Jay Bruce, where nice player, good guy, you wish him the best, but doesn't necessarily check all the boxes to make the team better in 2019. So that call is made. It is what it is. And, the catching situation I'm going to talk about in just a minute seems to be back to where it's been over the last 4 years or so, with d'Arnaud and Plawecki as the backstops for the Mets. I want to talk about an option that, of course, is being considered again in just a moment. But first, I want to get into a couple of the other moves that have been made in the NL East. Shortly after the Mets and the Mariners sealed the deal on their trade, the Phillies completed a trade with the Mariners to send shortstop Jean Segura to Philadelphia. And the Phillies parted with a couple of their key prospects, as well as Carlos Santana, which was a surprise to me. I was surprised to see that the Mariners took that contract back from the Phillies. But Segura is a good player, real good player. But the reason I want to talk about him is that if you look at his career numbers and his age and where he is now, and you compare that and sit it side by side with what Ahmed Rosario has put up so far in his young career, the two players look very similar. And I'm not saying that Rosario is going to be the next Jean Segura. I don't know that, but I'm saying that Rosario's career trajectory right now is moving up, and he's a commodity that's been proven for the Mets. And I'd really like to see the Mets hang on to Ahmed Rosario for the simple reason that he's under team control, he's very young, and the reason I'm bringing it up is that the Mets are talking about trading for JT Realmuto again. That rumor's resurfaced as of yesterday afternoon. And, one of the things in the press conference that impressed me the most was that Brodie Van Wagenen has really turned this Mets franchise, completely around, at least from an onlooker's standpoint. Whereas, like in the past, if the Mets had pulled off a deal like this with the Mariners like 2 years ago, I think everybody in baseball would have looked at it and been like, well, Sandy's done now. He's made his one move. Doesn't seem to be the case with Brodie that he's one and done at all. He's looking to make a ton of moves and make this team better. I'm concerned, though, that trading for Realmuto will cost the Mets one of Rosario, Conforto, or Nimmo. And I don't want to trade any of those three guys. Conforto should be close to untouchable because of his upside. Nimmo has shown last year that he can be an elite offensive player with his on-base percentage and his OPS. And Rosario, to me, like I said, is on the career path to become a really solid shortstop, a really good major league shortstop. I don't want to trade any of those guys for Real Muto, who is a really good player, really good catcher, but that's expensive. And they're going to also have to part with prospects. And I can't imagine that Andres Jimenez's name is not included in all of this. So I don't want to part with this core of young Mets, any one of them. For Real Muto, who I get is young, but he's a catcher. Catchers break down, and he's not exactly been completely healthy either. He's missed a good amount of time on the disabled list over the last few years. He's definitely the best player on the Marlins, but I don't know that I'd be willing to pull the trigger on that trade if I'm the Mets. I think we leave that one alone. Speaking of the Phillies, a couple days ago, a story was broken that the Phillies were really close to getting Edwin Diaz, who, of course, is now the Mets closer. But for all the brainiacs on Twitter who know everything and complained about the Mets having all the leverage and giving it all to Seattle, I think the reality of that situation was that the Mets were obviously competing with not only another team for this elite closer, but also another team in their division. So I think it's a big boon for the Mets to have been able to secure Diaz and let the Phillies swing and miss on him. And it wasn't the only swing and miss for the Phillies. They, after the Diaz story, they had said that they are not going to be outbid for Patrick Corbin. And of course, yesterday, Patrick Corbin signed a really, really lucrative contract with the Washington Nationals. I think it was 6 years, $140 million. Patrick Corbin is a good pitcher. He's a real good pitcher. I don't think he's worth that kind of money. I just don't. And that lends itself to the Noah Syndergaard trade rumors. I don't want to see the Mets trade Noah Syndergaard, not when a guy who's not as good is gonna get a contract that's worth 6 years, $140 million. I don't care if it's deferred. I don't care if there's opt-outs. That's a ton of money to give up on a pitcher who, on a normal staff, is going to be the number 3, and on a weak staff is going to be a 2, but is definitely not an ace, not a number 1 pitcher at all. He does not deserve. I don't want to say it that way. He that's a lot of money to give up for a guy like that. I don't want to say he doesn't deserve it, but that's a lot of money to give up for one player who, if you had to compare him to Noah Syndergaard, and you asked every team in baseball, face value, don't worry about the money, which one would you rather have? Everyone's picking Noah Syndergaard. Everyone. There's no question about that. And so, looking at what happened with Corbin, with the Nats, who also recently acquired Yan Gomes from Cleveland, looking what happened with Corbin, it reaffirms my belief that the Mets should absolutely not be trading Noah Syndergaard. So the interesting part from yesterday, in addition to the announcements with Diaz and Cano, the rumors about Real Muto, the stuff with the Phillies and all, and the Nationals and stuff, the other interesting part to me was Jeff Wilpon. One of the biggest complaints that Mets fans have had have revolved around the fact that the Wilpons, particularly Jeff, who is sort of like the face of the ownership group in 2018, he doesn't say much. He's pretty quiet. And yesterday at the press conference, he not only did he talk, but he revealed a lot, I think, about teams' finances, how they're willing to invest, and I think we have to take this as not lip service, because the other thing that Brodie Van Wagenen said yesterday was this move should be a sign that this franchise is not just about talking, it's about doing. And with what Jeff Wilpon said, with what Robinson Cano said about the secret plan that Brodie told him about, different guys he's trying to acquire and looking to acquire for the Mets. There's a lot of activity that's going to continue happening with this Mets team this offseason. And I was texting with my friends last night, and one of the things I had said was this feels like it did in 2005 when Omar took over, and he went out and he made big splashes for the Mets. After that hadn't happened in a while, it was refreshing to see it happen, and it's no less refreshing today to see the Mets behaving like the big market team that they are. I like what's happening. It's exciting. It's fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to follow. Spring training is, by the way, 77 days away. It's going to be here before we know it. The winter meetings start next week. I can't wait to see how things unfold, and I'll be keeping a close eye on it. So as news breaks, as things unfold, I will be back to talk about them. But that's going to wrap it up for today. So I thank you for watching. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. You can leave me a comment below. And as always, let's go Mets.